This is a book with the bare head of the little bear Tibers and selling little Anne's meat. Oh, no, I'm wrong. This is actually a book with Tibers' bare head hanging and selling little Anne's diverse world travel stories. That's right, it's sauce purple. Having completed games such as Reunion, Harry Potter, Azeroth, Pirates of the Caribbean, StarCraft, The Lord of the Rings, S.H.I.E.L.D., Return to Azeroth, Diablo 2, Fate Zero, Dumbo, Mass Effect, White Snake, Game of Thrones, Dragon Ball, DC World, Runeland, MIB World, Gundam, Nezza World, a certain super electromagnetic cannon, Star Wars, Goblet of Fire, Great World, Kung Fu Panda, Ziyuan Star, currently rolling away 1 watch a day, 1 watch over 10,000 words. Keywords of the novel. The Journey of Shadowbear Tibus on the Plane. No pop-ups. The Journey of Shadowbear Tibus on the Plane TXT Complete Collection download, the latest chapter of Shadowbear Tibus on the Plane journey read. Chapter 1. My Master Anne. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. My Master and, hey, although it's fun here, I'm hungry. As night fell, Anne, wearing a red princess dress and a small red hood, sat alone on the swing on the lawn swaying. She, who was just 8 years old this year, used to have been leisurely wandering in the wilderness of the voodoo land before the morning, carefree. When she was in a bad mood, she would bully those wild monsters to play. For example, what monsters? Big snakes, crocodiles, and that old dragon. Oh, no, that old dragon was burned down by her a long time ago, it no longer exists. The entire voodoo land is Anne's backyard, and Anne always goes out to stroll once every few days, which has become a habit. Although the place of voodoo is already very familiar to Anne. However, she can still occasionally discover some fun little things, perhaps a beautiful gemstone, or some cute little animal. Well, although sometimes some animals are a bit bulky and have a cute appearance. Fierce. But for Annie, it's not a problem at all. What? Do you think the place of witchcraft is dangerous? For Anne, who can capture a fierce shadow bear at the age of 2, my master, can you please don't expose my wound, burn the tyrannical dragon at the age of 3, break through the heroic rank at the age of 5, approach a demigod at the age of 8, and play with fire even easier than breathing, the Venom Land is dangerous. I'm afraid you must be joking. Right. Perhaps the mysterious sorcerer Gregory Asta and his wife, the Shadow Witch Amarim, are more worried. Little Anne accidentally burned another unlucky egg into Coke. So, for the wildlife in the land of witchcraft, in addition to going out to forage and avoid predators every day, there is also one thing to add. Never appear in the sight of the great demon King Anne. If Anne accidentally sees you, then quickly lower your head and lie on the ground, never attracting her attention. Always remember. Little Anne is the greatest danger and most terrifying demon in the land of witchcraft. No one. Of course, this was already happening in the morning. Earlier, Anne, who was wandering around in the land of voodoo, came here out of curiosity after passing through the suddenly appearing, misty barrier-like portal, and here is New York, the Earth, Central Park of New York. At this point it was dinner time and Central Park in New York seemed a bit deserted. Although all the streetlights had already been turned on, stingy Americans did not install too many streetlights in the park. According to the official statement, taxpayers cannot waste their funds. So, under the influence of insufficient streetlights and lush trees, it is not surprising that the park may appear somewhat dim at night. Now, Anne noticed that there were fewer and fewer visitors in the park, even those shameless and beautiful sisters who liked to lie naked on the grass, reading books and basking in the sun, slowly walked away after the sun had set in the west. And just now, by the lawn, the kind and dark-skinned aunt who sells hamburgers and drinks also drove away her dining car. Thinking of that thing called a hamburger, little Annie couldn't help but swallow her saliva. That thing was really delicious. Now, she still has a bit of aftertaste. However, it's a bit regrettable that the black ant didn't accept her coins or gems. This is really annoying. Coins and gemstones, can't you even buy things? On the contrary, those colorful papers can do it. What is this truth? Originally, her teddy bear Tibers wanted to encourage her to forcefully rob, but Anne herself is such a good child. How could she openly rob someone else's things? Don't see how bad it is. Moreover, her Amorine mother also said that one cannot use magic to bully the weak, nor can one steal someone else's belongings casually. That black ant must be human, not any animal, so little Anne didn't dare to rob at that time. Annie still remembers that at noon, she ran to the strange black ant's stall, grabbed a handful of gold coins, and said she wanted to buy a hamburger, which really scared the black ant. The black ant named Jenny stared at her for a long time, but in the end, she didn't take her coins. However, in the end, she kindly gave little Anne a 3-layer hamburger for free. After all, a cute little loli always has some privileges, right? Remember, this is Anne's first time relying on her face to grab something to eat, right? This makes her feel a bit awkward. You should know that when she was in the land of witchcraft, she relied on her strength, either openly or covertly, or various threats, or grabbed fireballs to force others to give her things she liked for free. That's right, it's just a gift. Absolutely not for grabbing. You must never go out and talk nonsense. Little Anne sighed helplessly as she looked at the small mountains of gemstones and coins piled up in her space pocket. These gold coins and gemstones, some of which were picked up in the wilderness of the Voodoo land, and always found some interesting little things in the wilderness, some were given by her parents, and some were easily picked up by her from the Grey Order vault when she looked beautiful. However, a large part of them were found in the nest of the despicable dragon after burning it down. Who made it refuse to take Annie flying? It's just a bad thing. This is Anne's original words back then. After learning the truth afterwards, Gregory Osta and his wife could only express deep condolences to the ignorant old dragon and warmly help and confiscate its inheritance. However, the mysterious sorcerer Gregory Osta did not misappropriate his daughter Anne's spoils of war. The Grey Order was still very wealthy, as the saying goes. No matter how poor you are, you will never be poor enough to become a fae. Moreover, it is a Grey Order composed of a group of legal masters. For this reason, Anne's mother, the Shadow Witch Amorine, specially kept a constant dimensional space in Anne's pocket so that Anne could store her toys. Interesting little thing. Shining stones. Or are they spoils of war? Tibers, I'm hungry now. Are you hungry? Tibus did not use telepathy to answer her master's words, because no one knew better than Tibus about his master's dark belly and strength. Having been under her command for 6 years, she would no longer be fooled by her cute and pitiful disguise. Back then, she was just pretending to be cute and fooling him to eat her, but in the end. Oh, forget about those things. Back then, she was only 2 years old. And why did the wise and powerful future Shadow Bear King fall for her? Annie swung on the swing, pulling the toy shadow bear in front of her and fiddling with its 2 furry arms at the same time. Although this place called the park is very fun, much more so than the land of voodoo. It has swings, carousels, many children to play with, delicious marshmallows, and fried chicken. Hamburg. Alright, just thinking about hamburgers makes Annie feel even hungrier. Why hasn't Mom found us yet? Tibs. They've already triggered the coordinates. I think Mom must have forgotten. What a nuisance. Annie is starting to feel homesick now. In the past, when Anne got lost in the land of voodoo, she would activate the necklace her mother gave her, and within 10 breaths, either her mother Amram or her father Gregory Osta would always come to Anne's side. It is said that there are also many interesting protective spells enchanted in this necklace. However, little Anne has never experimented or needed those protective magic. She herself is a very powerful mage. The space magic that she activated the most was still one of the coordinate tracing spells. After it was activated, the Gregory Osta couple would always lock Anne's coordinates in the first place and teleport them to her side. Originally, This magic was meant to protect and just in case, but Anne often used it when she got lost, so over time, and preferred it to be called the Great Summoning Art. Summoning Dad or Mom. However, unfortunately, today Anne's summoning magic has failed for the first time and she has not received any response. Tibus actually knew that there was no response to Master Anne's magic. He knew that this place was no longer the main material world of the land of Valoran, but a different world. However, Tibus did not give Master Anne any warning and finally came out, leaving the safe land of voodoo. Tibus wished that this world could be as dangerous as possible, so perhaps he could come out frequently to let out the wind. You should know that when you were in the land of voodoo, besides beating that old dragon, it had been trapped in a teddy bear for 6 years. Tibers once thought about ending his bear life, but after considering the lifespan of humans and his own bear life for at least a few thousand years, he felt that it was better to endure. Anyway, it's just a matter of decades or hundreds of years. Can you bear it at this moment? The sky is gradually getting dark. As the saying goes, when the forest grows bigger, there are all kinds of birds. At noon, the gold coins that the Black Aunt Jenny didn't dare to accept were already seen by a group of mischievous thugs. When there were many people, they didn't dare to take action, but now, hey. Little sister, come on, take a look at what this is. Lollipop, do you want it? In the dense forest of the park, 3 flowing black youths suddenly emerged. They first looked around cautiously and then lowered their duckbill caps. After confirming that the surveillance cameras could not see their appearance in this situation, they gathered around little Anne, who was swinging alone on the swing. One of the niggers, named Bruce, was holding a large lollipop in his hand and reached out to Anne. His accomplices, Andy and Mike, stared greedily at Anne's pocket from the side. These 3 people used to work in a gold shop to steal gold, but unfortunately, they were discovered by the shop owner and promptly reported to the police when they committed the crime. So, the 3 of them were honored to have spent several years in prison. Recently, they were just released on parole and are still unemployed. At noon, those who had worked in a gold shop could tell at a glance that Anne's coins were real. However, they didn't dare to speak up at the time, just exchanged glances secretly and remembered it in their hearts. Originally, they wanted to find an opportunity to steal it, but there were too many people in the park at the time, and they were not professional pickpockets. In the absence of professional expertise, they were not sure if they could steal the coins from little Anne's pocket without realizing it. So they stared at Anne and waited until now. At this time, the park has become very deserted here, and in addition, in a dim environment, the role of surveillance cameras has been minimized. This is their best chance to take action. Look. This is a lollipop, do you want it? It's very sweet. As long as you give us some gold coins, it will be yours soon. Annie turned her head to look at the lollipop, then at the dark guy Bruce holding the lollipop. After some thought, she took out a handful of gold coins and gemstones from her pocket. Do you think it's this kind of thing? And blinked her innocent big eyes and asked cute. Sigh, these fools. Tibus, who was held in Anne's hand, rolled his eyes in his heart. These 3 scumbags with less than 5 combat abilities dare to come and behave recklessly in front of Anne's master. This is simply seeking his own death. The combat abilities of these 3 people are too poor. Tibus felt that he had no chance to be released, so he decided to take a nap. Gold coins. Also, gemstones. Upon seeing this, Bruce and his companions immediately turned red in their eyes, and a rapid burst of hot air erupted from their nostrils. They thought to themselves, developed, really developed this time. Whether it's the fine wine in the nightclub, women, or those cute little powder bags. With these gold and gemstones in front of them, the 3 of them can enjoy themselves for a long time. Bruce was just about to reach out and grab it, but Anne deftly withdrew her hand and stuffed the coins and gemstones back into her pocket. Then, she lightly jumped off the swing, grabbed one hand of the teddy bear Tibers, and bounced towards the park gate. I'm not going to eat candy made of strange millet. Annie is going home, see you again, watching and about to walk away. Bruce and the other three became anxious. Mike, who had always been impatient, immediately drew out his small knife and chased after him. Don't be foolish, guys, just grab it by force. They are not good people. Just a few days ago, they came out not long ago, but they were still in a small alley, stabbing and killing an unlucky guy to grab a few tens of dollars. I don't know, did that unlucky corpse in the sewer really smell? As Anne looked at the three people blocking her face again, she tilted her head and frowned adorably. She didn't expect these people to dare to treat her like this. This really surprised her a bit. White-skinned kid, stop talking nonsense. Hurry up and take out all the gold coins from your pocket, otherwise I'll cut through your cute little face. Mike gestured with the shiny knife on his hand, reaching out to reach into Anne's left pocket. Don't scratch. Mike, don't you think this little girl looks delicate and beautiful? Why don't we just tie her up? Maybe those crazy rich people with special hobbies will pay a big price. That's right. That's right. That's a good idea. However, let's take out the gold coins and those gems first. Andy on the other side also reached out a hand to grab Annie's right arm, and reached out to her right pocket. Bruce, who arrived straight ahead in time, had already thrown away the lollipop. He spread out his palm and covered Anne's face, trying to forcefully seal her mouth and not let her shout and scream out of fear to avoid unnecessary trouble. White-skinned brats. Humph, Annie hates you, you must be bad guys. Annie cleverly took a small jump back and managed to avoid the three people's physical interception in time. How dare they even touch her? Mom once said. If you encounter a bad person, you can burn him. As she spoke, her empty right hand, which had not grabbed Tibers, reached out and spread out her palm. Her pure white and delicate palm was facing the three people in front of her. Flame. Officer Rick Grimes is a small patrol officer who just finished today's patrol, and his patrol area happens to be the Central Park area. Originally, he could have gone home from work 10 minutes ago, but another jerk police officer had said on the walkie-talkie before work that there was a little girl playing alone in the park. And it seems like you haven't seen any parents accompanying you yet. So, the head office of the police department said in their recent reply that they hope Rick can confirm again before leaving work. In this city, taxpayers are a very powerful species. In order to avoid being complained of for dereliction of duty and for his small bonus, Rick had to grit his teeth and reluctantly delay his end of work time by a little bit. He planned to go to the place where his colleagues mentioned to confirm again and see the specific situation of that mischievous little brat. What a troublesome little girl. Maybe I'll have to find her mother later. Or should we take her home? This is really deadly. Rick is very hungry now. He just wants to finish work early, then go home and take a comfortable hot shower before having a beautiful dinner. However, if you think so, the commands from above must still be executed unless he doesn't want to do this job anymore. So, in the end, he could only complain helplessly and walk slowly towards his destination. Finally, after shaking for a while, Officer Rick finally turned around an intersection. Oh. Oh my God. Why is this impossible? Hello. Gentlemen, I think you can't guess what I just saw. Rick held down the voice button on the walkie-talkie pinned under his shoulder, staring blankly at the distant scene and exclaiming in shock. Actually, he was more than just shocked. Not far away, the scene that just happened completely overturned Rick's decades-old outlook on life. He can never imagine how such a thing could have happened. The first chapter was revised again, and the first and second volumes were also revised once. When it was first sent out, because I didn't understand anything, it felt a bit messy and had to be reworked. However, the VIP chapter is much better. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Master, there are spies outside. Let me go out and kill him. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 3. You can't say bald just because your hairline is high. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 3. You can't say bald just because your hairline is high. On a remote small street in downtown Manhattan, New York, this place has always been famous for its cuisine. Various delicacies can meet the needs of most foodies in the world, but of course, the price is definitely not affordable for ordinary people. The public security here is relatively good, and the unique commercial and financial investment environment makes the population relatively dense. It's already noon off work time, and the benches and restaurants on the street are filled with all kinds of people. These elites who have just finished work and rested, or the executives from a certain company, are enjoying their superior and luxurious life. However, compared to the crowded situation of other stores, there is an ice cream shop that appears quite unconventional. Now, there is only one little girl buried in eating a large cup of ice cream in this store. Even a few passers-by who occasionally want to enter the store and enjoy the coolness of summer have been refused by the shop owner, who waved and shook their heads. They have been informed that their shop has been booked today and will no longer receive other customers. Hi, hello. Is there anything special about the Target? On a street bench not far from the small shop, there were 3 people sitting. They were Phil Coulson, Melinda, and a special agent from the Divine Shield Bureau. As for the names of the dragon sets, don't mind too much. The person speaking was Coulson, who was holding 2 unique gold coins in his hand. It was said that he had exchanged them from the owner of the ice cream shop. Anyway, the exchange process didn't seem very pleasant to the shop owner. So far, sir, no. The goal has been to eat ice cream since 9:00 in the morning. There are also some small dim sum. Yes, if I remember correctly, it should be the 4th cup now. The spy in charge of surveillance replied. He had just secretly calculated an account in his mind, and combined with the level of consumption here, he felt that this little girl had eaten up the equivalent of his weekly salary in just one morning. It seems that this is really a bear child from a wealthy family. Ordinary families really can't afford to raise him. By the way, have you also investigated this gold coin? Coulson played with the coins for a while, but he couldn't tell what it was all about. Okay, actually, he obviously didn't recognize any of the patterns or text on it, so he had no choice but to hand them over to Melinda, who was slightly curious and looked over. Yes, I scanned the coins when I received them in the morning, and the data model and material analysis have been transmitted to the Intelligence Analysis Department at headquarters. However, according to the latest news they just received, through comparison, these coins should not belong to any type that has appeared in human history, at least there are no identical or similar ones in our Divine Shield database. Moreover, even the above text, our language experts have no idea, but they are clearly not fabricated. The most important thing is that after sample testing, their age is very long. Even far beyond the civilization history of human beings starting to use gold coins, this is obviously impossible. So, you still have to look at it yourself. The agent finished speaking and handed Coulson a communication tool similar to a tablet, with the latest information just sent back by the Intelligence Analysis Department above and below. Okay, maybe we can have a good conversation with that little girl. Has she ever experienced emotional loss or violent tendencies? Coulson thought for a moment and decided to try to have direct contact with the target, which was also the main reason why he and Melinda came here. After looking at the dense crowd around him, he was a bit worried that if the contact was not smooth and the target became uncontrollable, it would be a lot of fun. No. Since I received orders to track the target until now, she has been eating ice cream and there has been no other situation since she entered this store. Moreover, even ice cream has been paid for, the agent answered truthfully and looked at the gold coin held in Melinda's hand. Okay. I think I might know what to do. Coulson got up and walked towards the ice cream shop. Melinda frowned for a moment and quickly followed suit. Wow. The ice cream is so delicious. Tibers. Would you like some too? Annie took a spoonful of ice cream in big gulps. This cup is strawberry flavored. She has already tasted taro flavored, chocolate flavored, and cream flavored. It is said that there are many different types, but Anne is not in a hurry because she has already paid the shopkeeper a lot of gold coins. The shopkeeper said that all the ice cream in the store belongs to her today. This is really good news. When you leave later, make sure to pack a little bit and take it away. About 100 cups of ice cream like this will be enough. Good food can smooth out Anne's restlessness, and there's no need to consider things like going home for now. Oh. I'm sorry, Tibus. I forgot, you can't eat. Annie looked at Tibus, who was thrown on the chair next to her. It was her teddy bear. That's right, it looks like a teddy bear on the outside. At least that's what the shop owner thinks. It's normal for a little girl to talk to her toys, even though she's a little older. But for the sake of gold coins, who cares? The children of wealthy families are really rich. The shopkeeper touched a few gold coins in his pocket. What's despicable is that 2 were forcibly confiscated by a law enforcement agency called What Bureau just now, but the remaining ones are enough for him to exchange for a large sum of money. Perhaps it can still be sold as an antique. However, the only thing he is a bit worried about now is: will the little girl's parents send him a lawyer's letter when they find out? Master. That bald guy and a female human ant have come over. I've noticed them already. They've been muttering to the bad guy outside who's been watching you for a long time. He must be a bad guy too. Let me go out and deal with them, right? Feeling the spiritual exchange from Tibers, and glanced at it and didn't care about it. Instead, she continued to eat her favorite ice cream. Children. Do you mind if Uncle and Aunt sit here? Annie had just finished talking to Tibers and was about to eat another spoonful of ice cream when she suddenly noticed a man and a woman sitting next to her. The woman sat on the empty chair on the left, while the man sat on the chair on the right where Tibers was placed. He grabbed her teddy bear and played with it, pulling and shaking its arms, doing what he thought was a fun move. Ah! Master! Let me out! I want to eat him. Eat him. Although he looks very ugly, you can still eat him by cutting off his head and tail. Ha! Seeing this surprised and a bit. What is this strange millet that looks a bit bald? How dare he hold Tibers in his hand and play like this? You know, Tibers is a powerful shadow bear. After it grows, it can take a paw and shoot an old dragon to the ground, making it unable to get up for half a day. Its dark shadows and flames can burn everything around it. Except for Anne, no one has ever dared to grab Tibers and play with him. Even the great mages in the Grey Order dare not. No mage is foolish enough to let a shadow bear approach within 10 yards, let alone grab it and play with it. Of course, the great mages of the Grey Order all know what Anne's teddy bear is and they wouldn't go to death like that. Uncle, are you a bad person? Annie felt the emotional fluctuations coming from Tibers and couldn't make up her mind. She looked at the bald monster, Shoo Shoo, and asked Cute with an ice cream spoon in her mouth. Oh. Of course not, does Uncle look like a bad person? Speaking, Coulson tugged at the teddy bear again, making an even more exaggerated gesture and making a face at Anne. Oh, what a pity. And carefully felt the increasingly strong emotions coming from Tibus and decided to ignore him. She scooped up another mouthful of ice cream and put it in her mouth. Because my mother once said, you can't let Tibers come out casually, and you can't burn people casually, unless that person is a bad person. Well, this bald monster Shoo Shoo laughs like a thief. Although it doesn't look like a good person, it hasn't reached the point where it must be burned down in one go. What? What a pity. Coulson and Melinda feel a bit out of sync with this little girl's thinking. However, originally the two of them came to contact the target, but now that they have a conversation, they must continue. Sometimes important information is often leaked from the other party's unintentional language. A little girl's brainless words may yield more. Tibers said he hates you, he asked me to release him and say he wants to bite off your head in one bite. Annie took another bite of ice cream and turned her head to look at this bald and strange millet. Suddenly, she felt so pitiful for him. If it weren't for her own restraint on Tibers, he must have been bitten off long ago, right? Tibers. Who is Tibers? Why did he bite off my forehead and head? Coulson is a bit restless. If it's an ordinary little girl, he must think she's joking and talking crazy, but he thinks it's better to treat this little girl with caution. Melinda's body was already tense beside her, as if she could launch an attack at any moment. However, Coulson signaled with his eyes that she should relax first. The contact was relatively smooth, and things were far from developing to the point where an attack was needed. What you have is Tibus. Annie gave Coulson a cold glance and asked me who Tibus was, holding Tibus in her hand. What a nuisance. With this thought in mind, Anne lowered her head and continued to focus on dealing with the ice cream in the cup. This teddy bear's name is Tibers. Huh, you're really joking, teddy bears don't bite people. Coulson breathed a sigh of relief. How could a teddy bear possibly bite someone? Perhaps she doesn't like others touching her toys, just like she never lets others touch her car. However, despite that, he carefully put down the girl's toy and didn't want to overly stimulate her. I'm not lying to you. Tibers can really bite you to death with one bite. But I won't let it come out. Annie thought for a moment and reached out to grab Tibers into her arms, so they wouldn't really irritate Tibers. Haha. Coulson thinks it's better not to get tangled up with the little girl for now and quickly changed the topic. So, little sister, can you tell me your name? We already know each other now, right? My name is Coulson, Phil Coles. The one next to me is Aunt Melinda. Well, Anne. My name is Anne. And found this strange millet a bit annoying. Don't he know he's already obstructing himself from eating ice cream? However, since the other party introduced herself, and still said her name. She always thought she was a polite and well-behaved girl. Nice to meet you. Annie. So, what about your parents? Why didn't anyone accompany you? You didn't go home last night, did you? Maybe we can help you find them and they'll come and take you back. Coulson quickly shifted the topic to the little girl's parents, and his intuition told him that this was a breakthrough point. He couldn't find the little girl's background, and knowing the name of the little girl's parents might lead to specific information. Can you tell me their names? Is that so? Annie tilted her head and pondered for a moment. She had been to this strange place for a day and a night, even though she had activated the coordinate positioning spell. However, her parents and the others had not yet come to find her. Perhaps these two sudden strange people could be of help, maybe. My dad's name is Gregory Asta, and my mom's name is Amarine. Finally, useful intelligence has been obtained. Melinda secretly liked Coulson and opened her personal device, intending to keep a complete record of the conversation that followed. So, what do they do? Where do you live? Coulson was afraid the little girl wouldn't understand, so he gestured. For example, teachers, lawyers, drivers, and so on. However, Melinda next to her didn't agree with Coulson's words. How could the parents of a little girl who was dressed in gorgeous and finely crafted clothes and sold gold coins be these ordinary people? A certain company, the chairman of a chaebol, the president or something, right? Annie frowned. Teacher. Lawyer. Driver. What is that thing? Why can't I understand his meaning when I have a spell that is familiar with language on my body? Are they asking about professions? Oh. I remember. My dad is a mysterious sorcerer. Mom is a shadow witch. My family lives in the land of voodoo. Annie bit her finger, as if she only knew so much. The voodoo land of Valoran. You must know that, right? Coulson and Melinda felt that they must have misunderstood, the mysterious sorcerer. Shadow Witch. The land of voodoo. Are these all divine horses and ghosts? But considering the scene in this little girl's photo where 3 thugs were set on fire, the 2 of them instinctively felt that what she said seemed to be the truth. Okay, let's put it another way, where do they work? Melinda took the conversation and asked. Going to work. Annie suddenly felt that the spell effect of language proficiency seemed not very good, and the words of these 2 strange militantes in front of her were so difficult to understand. Dad is the leader of the Grey Order, and Mom seems to be the same. They work in the Grey Order. By the way, Dad is the most powerful sorcerer in the continent of Valoran. Mom is also the most powerful witch in the continent of Valoran. Grey Order. What is the name of an organization? It seems that this is important intelligence. This seems understandable, but the continent of Valoran. What kind of ghost is this? Is there really this continent on Earth? Coulson and Melinda suddenly felt that if what this girl named and said was true, perhaps the divine shield could never easily capture her and lock her up in the freezer like they used to deal with mutants. Otherwise, it would definitely cause huge trouble. Modified, end of this chapter. Chapter 4. Your geography class must have been taught by a physical education teacher. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Your geography class must have been taught by a physical education teacher. After exchanging a glance, Coulson and Melinda felt that there was something wrong with the art style. It seemed like things were moving in a more and more crooked direction, and it seemed like they were getting out of their control. The 2 of them were just sent by the director to come into contact with a little girl who may be a mutant, assess the degree of harm to each other, and gather some useful intelligence. Finally, based on the specific situation, they decided to lure the little girl away or pack her up and take her away, and then lock her up in a special place for control. Finally, they found a way to notify her parents, and this incident came to a perfect end. If anyone else's words need to be sealed and kept confidential, the Divine Shield Bureau naturally has a dedicated person to do it. The agents have already handled this kind of matter with great experience. There are many special humans being held in the frozen prison, and this little girl is definitely not the first, nor will she be the last. But now that the conversation has come to this point, based on the intelligence obtained from this little girl's mouth, Coulson feels that if this matter is handled according to the usual process, it will definitely not be over. If we catch the little one and come out with the old one, who knows what kind of power the Divine Shield will face in the future. So, he thinks it's better to be more cautious. So, that continent of Valoran. Is my spelling correct? Where is that place called Valoran? How big is it? Coulson organized the language, and he felt that the spelling of Valoran was a bit obscure. The word should not be in the dictionary. But asking a little girl this kind of question makes him feel a bit foolish. A little girl who looks a few years old should be asking for free, right? Coulson swore that he had never heard of the word Valoran continent. Although he was daydreaming in his geography class back then, the teacher who taught geography was definitely not a physical education teacher. Don't you know? All right. This is the continent of Valoran. Look. Annie didn't care what he thought. She reached out her tender little finger and nodded at an empty ice cream cup on the table. A wave of magic emanated, and the cup immediately floated above the table and melted into a hollow, transparent sphere, the size of a 20-centimeter diameter globe. The texture on the surface of the glass hollow sphere clearly revealed a continent and several islands. This is the planet where the continent of Valoran is located. This spell is an advanced casting of the mage's hand. Only powerful mages with high mana and outstanding talent can cast it. It can cast certain materials into any shape and suspend them without any additional attack power. Annie learned it when she was 3 years old. Usually she uses this spell to pinch toys, but she rarely uses it again when Tibers can play with it. The continent of Valoran looks like this. Annie pointed to her and said, I instantly made a planet chart. She still remembers that when I was playing with my mother's astrological model, I accidentally broke one, and then my bad mother punished her by using magic to make 100 of the same ones. That's a whole 100. Ms. Amarin, the Shadow Witch, also praised her for exercising her lovely daughter's casting ability. Annie now thinks that her mother back then was really annoying and annoying. This. What is this? How did it change? Your superpowers. Coulson and Melinda stood up in surprise, their chairs overturned without even noticing, just staring at the crystal ball floating on the table with wide eyes. They were really surprised. This is magic. I don't know how to have superpowers. Annie doesn't know why they reacted so strongly. These things are normal in the continent of Valoran, right? As for superpowers. It seems like I heard my dad say that there are people in the world outside of Voodoo Land. But Anne knows she definitely doesn't have superpowers. This is magic, definitely not Lao Shizi's superpower. Magic. Alright. Coulson also felt that he shouldn't be so surprised. After all, mutants have a variety of abilities, and he shouldn't be so surprised if the little girl had an extra trick. So, is this the continent of Valoran? Pointing to the crystal ball floating on the table, Coulson felt that this was the most valuable intelligence he had obtained today, and quickly gestured for Melinda to film this scene with instruments. Where is your home? Annie blinked her beautiful big eyes and reached out to draw a small circle of milk oil with ice cream on her fingers in the middle and lower part of the Valoran continent on the planet globe. Here it is. This is the land of voodoo. My home is right here. Well, Coulson looked carefully at the planet instrument and pondered for a moment. Melinda next to her is recording with a camera. Looking at the clearly visible geography of the continent on the planetary globe, with mountains, swamps, lakes, and deserts, it is clear at a glance, and the workmanship is very exquisite. It is definitely not something that a little girl can casually fabricate. He can now be almost certain that the probability of this little girl being an alien is as high as 99%. Looking at the small area circled by and with ice cream, which was the land of voodoo, Coulson thought for a moment and pointed to the castle-shaped area above the land of voodoo, saying, "So, what is this place again?" "Oh, that's Texas." Annie doesn't like Texas because her parents really dislike it, so she doesn't like it either. Texas. A country. What kind of place is that? Coulson didn't know the words on the planet's instrument and could only guess so. Dad said the people of Texas are a bunch of lunatics who always know how to fight. Annie still remembers Dad's evaluation of Texas. It is said that they didn't want to fight all day before crossing the Grand Barrier and moving to the land of voodoo. War. War maniac. Coulson thought to the Germans of World War II. Alright, Hitler began to lay down his gun. So what about here? It's also a country. What does it look like? He continued to point to another area on the map on the left opposite Texas, where the city model appeared. Based on the unfamiliar text marked on it, Coulson felt that this should be another country. That's the Kingdom of Dalmatia. Dalmatia. What do they do? And what kind of country is it? They were beaten by Nox all day long. Then Coulson pointed out a large area and clarified the basic situation of the continent called Valoran. Although he didn't get too detailed information from the young girl Anne, he still knew a lot of the local customs and traditions. For example, in the northernmost part of the mainland, Frederick, where there is a snowman, and said she had always wanted to catch one to play with, but her parents refused, Piltwave and Zwan to the right of Frederick, the people there are all a group of chemical lunatics. If one's own knowledge is not up to par, they will still mess with potions. There is also the Furima Desert in the middle of the continent. According to Annie, there is a dog-headed man who claims to be the Grim Reaper. He has sucked away all the souls of desert creatures, and his one attack can crush a mountain. Mom explicitly prohibits her from playing in the desert. Then to the southeast of the Voodoo land, across the Diamond Stone Mountains, lies Bondar City. And her mother have been there before, and there is a group of hairy people called the Yodels who are very short. Just like a group of little mice, that's N's original words, but these Yodelians can make robots, and there is something called an airplane that can fly around in the sky. Coulson thinks that the technological level of this group of people called Yodels should be very good. Seeking monthly tickets, recommended tickets, end of this chapter. Chapter 5, Come Out. Tibers. Bite them to death. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5, Come Out. Tibers. Bite them to death, so, uncle. Where are we now? Can you help me find my parents? Anne was a bit annoyed by these two strange people's questions and reached out to casually rotate the planet instrument of the Valoran continent, looking at Coulson, hoping that he could point out where this strange place was located on the Valoran continent. Annie always thought that after passing through the misty barrier like Space Gate, she must have been transported to some place on the continent of Valoran, but she didn't know the specific location. However, as long as she knew the specific location, and believed that she would eventually find her way home. That's right, that's it. Moreover, if it weren't for this strange uncle saying he could find his parents, and wouldn't have said so much to him. This strange uncle looks stupid and bald, it's not fun at all. The most important thing is that he even made himself eat ice cream. The aunt next to her is also very strange, always with a stinky face on her face, and she didn't randomly burn anything to damage her. Humph, Tibers said she has hostility towards herself and is suggesting setting fire to her or letting it out and eating her in one bite. Coulson looked at the Valoran planet still floating and spinning on the table and said with a hint of amusement, I don't think we'll be anywhere on this. Maybe we won't be able to help you find your parents. As he spoke, Coulson pulled out a tablet from his briefcase and operated it to retrieve a 3D image of a globe. He then reached out to Anne and said, Look. We're here now. Coulson pointed to the 3D globe on the screen, his finger pointing right at New York on the American continent. Ha! What a magical image. Oh. Is it the same as the TV on the wall? Annie looked at the screen of the tablet and then turned her head curiously to look at the back of the computer, but there was nothing on the back. This is not a magical image, it's computer technology. Hey! Don't knock, it will break. Coulson quickly reached out to block it. Technology. Annie thought for a moment, perhaps something similar to those robot monsters of the Yodel Mau Mau people. However, those technologies are not effective, and a fireball will almost fall apart after passing by. This is not Valoran, and finally realized the key point. On this magical computer, she did not see Valoran's shadow. The 3D globe on it was completely different from the Valoran planet, it must be two different planets. That's right. This is Earth. Seeing Anne throw her tablet on the table, Coulson quickly retrieved it, but there were still many important files on it. If it breaks, it can be very troublesome. Earth. How far is Earth from Valoran? I'm not very sure about this either, maybe it's as far away as the stars in the sky. Coulson organized the language and used a method that he believed the girl could understand to describe it. Now Coulson can be certain that this girl is some alien visitor. This is still Coulson's first close encounter with aliens, although there are quite a few alien objects in the Divine Shield Bureau. As for how far is Valoran from Earth? Where or what, Coulson thinks, this question should be addressed to the Federal Space Agency, maybe they will know. Are the stars in the sky as far away? That's so far. Can't we go home? Annie felt a bit aggrieved, biting her lower lip and throwing the spoon aside. Suddenly, she didn't want to eat ice cream. Because Anne's mother taught her about astrology, she knew how far the stars in the sky were. Even the farthest teleportation spell on the continent of Valoran could not be teleported to any star closest to Valoran. What's even worse is that Anne is not proficient in the knowledge of large dot-scale portal spells. If it's a medium to short-range teleportation technique within a planet, she might still be able to barely perform it if she carefully recalls experimenting a few more times, but the interstellar teleportation gates are definitely hopeless. Perhaps I can never go home again. The thought of never seeing her mother again made her feel a bit like crying, tears beginning to fill her beautiful emerald green eyes. Coulson awkwardly looked at the dull little girl with her head down. Just as he was thinking about how to comfort her a little, he heard a loud bang outside. A Ford car hit the floor-to-ceiling glass of an ice cream shop, causing it to shatter and shatter. The shattered glass splashed over, almost injuring 3 people sitting there. The owner in the distance was not so lucky, as half of his head was torn off by a rolling wheel, splashing red and white on the ground. It seemed that he couldn't survive. Coulson and Melinda quickly looked towards the street outside the store, and saw 2 green monsters emerging from somewhere, fiercely fighting each other. After finding cover in shock, the 2 of them took a closer look and realized that the muscular and green-headed giant monster in the distance was actually Hulk. For this big green guy, Coulson said he knows him because there is a record of the other party in the Divine Shield Bureau. If he remembers correctly, this green giant is called Hulk and his real name is Robert Bruce Banner. According to records, this is a genius PhD in nuclear physics, but in an accident, he was exposed to a large amount of radiation from a gamma bomb he created to protect his colleagues, causing his body to undergo a mutation and become the Hulk. The intelligence also says that when his emotions fluctuate violently, he will change his voice and become an irrational Hulk. What puzzled Coulson was, what was the other giant, who was also huge in stature and was wrestling with Hulk the Hulk, with a slightly lighter green body but a bone-like texture all over? Who is it again? Is it something created by the military again? Without waiting for Coulson to think more, the bony giant grabbed another car and threw it towards Hulk. However, it was hit by the green giant with an elbow, which was so deadly. The hit car then hit the ice cream shop where the 3 of them were located. The tremendous power of the 2 monsters caused the car's fuel tank to burst, and the sparks from the car that hit the shop door immediately caused the car's full cylinder of gasoline to be hit. Along with the previous car, it triggered a huge explosion. The flames and heat waves formed by the gasoline in the small space of the shop, as well as the fragments of the explosion, rushed towards us. It's done. This is the last thought of Coulson and Melinda. They never expected that they would inexplicably die at the hands of these 2 monsters on a random mission today. And it's still the suffocating method of being affected by the pond fish. Sure enough, being a spy is a high-risk profession. If I had known earlier, I should have applied for a transfer to the office earlier. I'm angry. The consequences are very serious. Upon hearing Anne's voice next to them, Coulson and Melinda, who had been waiting to die after the closing ceremony, were surprised to find themselves and others unharmed. Upon closer inspection, it turned out that the explosion just now was blocked by a seemingly red transparent film-like shield, and the flames and heat waves still raging in the store could not affect the 3 people inside the transparent film shield. Is this also the little girl's ability? Melinda and Coulson exchanged a glance, ignoring the shock in their hearts, and couldn't help but look at Anne again. Do mutated people have so many abilities? Perhaps she is really a magician. But Anne didn't care what they thought. She grabbed Tibers in her left hand and clenched her fist in her right hand, walking towards the outside of the store. Annie feels very angry today. Very angry. Very angry. She just learned that she might never be able to go home again and never see her mother again. This has already made her very uncomfortable and aggrieved, and she really wants to cry. Unexpectedly, a goosebump suddenly flew over and killed the owner who could make delicious ice cream. Before I could figure out the situation myself, the 2 giant beasts fighting outside relentlessly threw another iron lump. They must be trying to burn themselves to death too. Must be like this. This is simply unforgivable. Annie thought, it's always up to herself to burn others. And now someone actually wants to turn around and burn themselves. Hey. Interesting. Annie thinks. They must have never seen their own little bear, have they? Don't go. It's dangerous, ah. Melinda, who had just escaped death, instinctively wanted to hold on to Anne when she saw her wanting to leave the store. However, she quickly withdrew her hand from the flames emanating from Anne's body. Stepping out of the store, I looked at the two big guys who were still punching and kicking each other not far away, as well as the streets that had turned this place into a chaotic ruin. Annie let out a hard breath and thought carefully, feeling that it was more reliable to let Tibers go. I am a well-behaved girl who loves cleanliness, and I cannot fight with these two big savage orcs. That would be too unladylike. Even casting spells from afar is not very appropriate. Fighting, melee, and so on, it is better to let one's own little bear take charge. Moreover, Tibers has already been urging himself. So, that's the happy decision. Come out. Tibers. Bite them to death for me. Roar. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Even if it's a disaster, there will always be people who get rich. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Even if it's a disaster, there will always be people who get rich. The New York City of this world is full of disasters and difficulties. Not to mention the invisible evil at the bottom or the upcoming alien army, the two green monsters fighting each other on the streets have already caused great suffering to the New York citizens on the nearby streets. Cars torn and thrown by monsters, as well as the flames of fuel explosions and the high-speed splashing of bricks and stones, can cause fatal injuries to ordinary and vulnerable New York citizens, dying from impact and injuring from friction. During the crisis, the citizens could only panic and crawl out of the cars on the street, even ignoring the fact that the doors were not closed. When facing two green monsters fighting, they have no choice but to run away. Even if it's running away, some unlucky people will occasionally be smashed into strange shapes by streetlight poles or broken parts of cars that fly in from nowhere, or it could be steel fragments from a car explosion piercing through the chest, or it could be crushed into meat patties by a building fragment descending from the sky. Even a chubby guy who was running a bit slower was grabbed by a gray-green skinny monster giant's head and thrown into the air. After a flustered scream, he fell to the concrete floor with a bang sound and convulsed for a while before showing any further reaction. No one wants to stay longer in the battlefield of these two monsters. Even police and military personnel are starting to organize retreats. It is obvious that the light weapons in their hands, such as pistols or rifles, cannot cause any damage to these two monsters. And powerful weapons dare not be used casually in the city unless someone is willing to bear the responsibility of destroying large areas of New York. Otherwise, in such a situation, the police soldiers have no better way than to evacuate the crowd and escape with them. What is happening here is simply not a problem that ordinary humans or armies can solve. However, compared to the people on the street who are afraid of not running fast enough, there is a creepy man hiding behind a steel trash can who behaves somewhat unconventional. He did not retreat in the direction of the crowd's escape. Instead, he peeked behind the steel trash can and nervously watched the two monsters fighting not far away, muttering something incessantly. Paul is a Mexican taxi driver who has been driving taxis in New York for many years. However, due to his early years of smuggling from Mexico, he suffered for many years. Due to his hard work and no criminal record, he only managed to get a green card recently. For so many years, Paul started early and went dark. At least he paid off the debt of the taxi company, which was 9 out of 13. At present, in addition to paying off his debts, he also has his own taxi. Although he still has no savings or a house, his life seems to have some hope. Perhaps one day in the future, he may be able to bring his family to the United States to enjoy happiness. His taxi looks a bit worn out, and he may only be able to drive it for another year and a half before spending money on major repairs and maintenance. However, how did the money come from? Paul is a bit worried. If he doesn't have the money to repair his car, will he have to go back to the company to drive for those vampires? Oh. no. Paul swore that he never wanted to face those evil capitalists again. Those damn vampires. Perhaps God really favored Paul, and now there may be an opportunity to solve his problem. When Paul first came out of a small hamburger shop holding 2 paper bags filled with burgers and French fries, he saw 2 green monsters fighting. What almost blinded Paul was that they were still smashing things around. How could they throw cars around like balls? And coincidentally, Paul's old taxi was parked next to 2 fighting monsters. Oh, God! Praise you! Paul widened his eyes and hid behind a tin trash can, observing the battle in the distance. My eyes are filled with excitement. There are only 2 words left in my mind. Insurance. 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 As long as these 2 monsters smash his car, he definitely has a great hope of receiving a large sum of money, enough to buy a brand new taxi. In his opinion, as long as he can claim insurance, let this run-down car without air conditioning go to hell. Still undergoing major repairs. I poo. Oh, boy. You stepped on it. Paul's car is right next to 2 wrestling green monsters. But it's amazing, it's still unscathed to this day. The skinny green giant casually pulled a car and threw it at another muscular green giant, but the muscular green giant punched the car and it flew away. The car narrowly crossed Paul's taxi and hit the ground glass of an ice cream shop in the distance. It was scrapped. The skeleton Hulk saw this and pulled up another car next to Paul's taxi, throwing it towards the muscle Hulk again. However, it was hit by a punch and hit the same landing point as the previous car, causing an explosion. The flames and smoke in that place began to wreak havoc, and it seemed that some people inside were probably more or less unlucky. However, Paul didn't care about these things. After the skeletal Hulk lost his car twice and was knocked away, he wanted to use his old tricks and reach out to grab Paul's car again. However, he was grabbed by the muscular Hulk that rushed up in anger and crashed into it, causing the 2 monsters to roll towards the distance. They broke several street light poles and flattened several scrapped cars. Oh. No. God. No. You can't do this to me. Paul knelt down in pain, grabbing his head with both hands, watching the 2 monsters getting farther and farther away, while his car still parked well there. It's completely undamaged, maybe not even a scratch. Paul knows that he still wants to apply for insurance in such a situation. Dream it. Don't be joking. There won't be even a penny of insurance. It's uncertain whether those cunning insurers will ask him to pay next year's insurance premiums together. Now it's ready. Paul's insurance claim that he's about to get is gone. The money for the new car is gone. I don't know where the money for car overhaul and maintenance is yet. Oh my God. What did I do wrong? Why did you do this to me? Paul is desperate. 2 dirty hands covered his face, and there was once a large sum of insurance money placed in front of him. He thought the money was about to arrive, but he didn't expect it to be a bad joke played by God on him. Roar. A huge roar rang out, and as soon as Paul looked up in despair, he saw a huge teddy bear that was half a height higher than those 2 green monsters, and was covered in flames. Falling from the sky, Paul's taxi was trampled into a pile of scrap metal, and flames from the cracks on the teddy bear even ignited several nearby cars. The high temperature caused the air to boil and distort the light, which even Paul in the distance could clearly feel. After the car burned, a violent gasoline explosion soon came. Roar. After the explosion, the huge flame teddy bear that landed roared again, and then it looked towards the 2 green giants who had stopped fighting but were still twisted together in the distance. Their 2 green faces were now watching the flame monster teddy bear falling from the sky. Their anger-filled minds were momentarily confused about the situation, and they didn't know what this newly emerged flame giant bear was. Paul, who was hiding behind the trash can, first looked at the flame teddy bear in a daze, then blinked at the taxi that had been trampled on by it and burned into scrap metal. Without saying a word, he got up and turned around before running away. While running, he muttered, "Praise God." Paul now feels that God is still universal and does not treat him differently because he hardly ever goes to worship. Paul swore that after receiving the money to buy a new car, he would definitely go to church once a week for worship. Okay, if we can't do it once a week, at least once a month. Give it to me. Tibers. Bite them to death. A crisp little girl's voice sounded behind her, particularly clear on this chaotic and fearful battlefield, but no one noticed this, including Paul. What we are more anxious about is to leave this sure hell as soon as possible and stay here for an extra second, then there is a danger of an extra second. Life is very precious to the citizens of New York, and fighting between 2 or 3 monsters doesn't make much difference to them. Roar. After the sound of the little girl mixed in with the explosion, the flame bear began to roar angrily, and the 3 monsters began to fight together. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. When the flesh shield physical profession faces physical immune monsters. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. When the flesh shield physical profession faces physical immune monsters. Good afternoon, viewers in front of the TV. I'm a journalist from Canberra. As you can see, this is on the street of the Food Street in Manhattan, New York. Now I'm doing a live broadcast for you, please pay attention to my surroundings. A beautiful journalist with a microphone was facing the camera, and the crowd rushing past her was full of people who were frantically fleeing for their lives. However, the beautiful journalist was still talking incessantly with the microphone, without paying any attention to the crowd rushing by or the people who occasionally bumped into her. As the camera rotated, 2 blurry giant figures could be seen fighting behind the beautiful journalist, accompanied by bursts of explosions and the sound of flames. However, due to the camera being focused on the beautiful journalist, the distant situation may not be very clear for the audience in front of the TV. Oh my God! Canberra! Be careful! Get down! The beautiful journalist Canberra was about to turn around and introduce the distant battle to the audience when she suddenly heard the photographer shouting loudly at her. With a shake of the camera, the audience vaguely saw a car flying over Canberra's head. Fortunately, this lucky and beautiful journalist didn't seem to have been harmed in any way. Of course, a bit embarrassed is certain. Canberra is a special correspondent for New York television. Originally, today I was doing a routine live survey on the streets of New York City for the federal bill, in order to increase the TV station's pitiful ratings. Everything was going smoothly originally, and the questionnaire survey for the live broadcast was mostly conducted. However, as it was about to end, a huge green humanoid monster suddenly jumped out of a building. Before Canberra could react, this green monster, covered in bones and protruding ribs, began to carry out extensive killing and destruction on the streets. At first, Canberra was as panicked as the fleeing crowd around her, she just wanted to escape. However, after another green muscular monster fell from the sky and began to fight against the bone-spur gray-green monster, Canberra suddenly realized that she should not and must not escape at this time. Because what is happening right now is big news. As long as you seize this opportunity in front of you, then get promoted. Get a raise. Increase visibility. Wait for the honor, I will be at my fingertips. And she herself will be able to completely get rid of the awkward position of being a beautiful vase journalist. Since that's the case, then even risking one's life is necessary for live streaming. Even if I risk my life, I want to live stream everything that happens here. As for the original questionnaire survey, let it see Satan. With another wave of camera shaking, it seems that the photographer stood up and adjusted the camera. Canberra once again stood in front of the restored camera, leaning half of her body to signal the cameraman to focus on the distant battle. Audience friends, do you see it? Look at those 2 monsters in front. Oh! Oh my God! Canberra let out a scream, and 2 green monsters in the distant battle through a broken car door, which roared towards Canberra. Fortunately, the car door hit the street lamp post, and after tilting it, it changed direction and cut into the window of a nearby shop, leaving the tidy shop in disarray. I don't know if anyone inside the shop has been injured. However, Canberra no longer cares about these things. She just pushes aside the panicked crowd and signals the cameraman to continue broadcasting the distant battle. She also occasionally gathers in front of the camera to say a few words, not missing any opportunities to increase her visibility and show her face. The bone spurs that are fighting Hulk in the distance. The original name of the Hulk was Emil Bronsky, and he was injected with gamma radiation twice by the military before today. Although his strength has made significant progress, he is still not satisfied because compared to Hulk's strength, it is simply not worth mentioning. He wants more. So, after forcing Dr. Stern, Mr. Blue, to inject him with Hulk's super serum, he finally became what he is now. No less than the huge body of the Hulk, with tremendous power. However, he did not become a monster dominated by anger like Hulk. He was still Emil Bronsky, and his mind was still very clear. He clearly felt the huge changes in his own body, as well as the immense power, endless power. That's an extraordinary feeling of expansion. Emil Bronsky felt that he was a god right now. He himself is God. He can already dominate everything himself. So, after gaining this new power, he needs to vent it well, on the one hand, to let out the endless power in his body. On the other hand, it also allows those foolish mortals to see their extraordinary power. Emil Bronsky angrily took a big step forward, only punching the charging Hulk away. Before the opponent landed, he suddenly exerted force and rushed forward, grabbing the Hulk's head and throwing it hard to the ground. What? Do you only have this little skill? Stepping on the chest of Hulk, Emil Bronsky sneered with disdain. He not only possesses powerful strength and a clear mind, but also possesses skilled combat skills honed through years of military espionage. This is not something that Hulk, who is solely dominated by anger, loses himself and fights instinctively, can compare to. So, in the short time that Hulk jumped off the plane, he could only be hit by Bronsky without any fighting power. You don't deserve this kind of power. Emil Bronsky grabbed one of Hulk's legs and threw him to the other side of the street. He grabbed a car and threw it forcefully towards Hulk, only to be hit by Hulk's elbow, who stood up in time. However, Emil Bronsky didn't mind at all. He now plans to play well with this Hulk, fooling him while also adapting to his newly acquired strength. If it's exercise, obviously no one is more suitable than the Hulk in front of me. So he grabbed another car next to him and smashed it over, but unfortunately, the car was also punched and flew away by Hulk. The car was like a toy and was hit by the huge power of the Hulk, hitting a street store in the distance and exploding violently. When Bronsky wanted to do it again, Hulk suddenly rushed over and hugged his waist. The tremendous force and inertia drove him straight to the air, and then the two of them rolled together into the corner on the other side of the street. You scumbag! Emil Bronsky used a standard twist and counter tactic to not only easily break free from Hulk's entanglement, but also turned around and pressed him under his body, then grabbed the opponent's neck with his left hand and raised his right hand, boom. With a loud cry. A heavy hook punch hit Hulk's chin fiercely. Hulk, who has a powerful and unbeatable power, but only knows how to fight with a beast-like instinct and intuition, is obviously not the opponent of Emil Bronsky, who once worked for the former Soviet spy organization KGB, in front of him. The opponent not only has a powerful force of the same origin as his, but also has a clear mind and incredibly rich combat experience. Well, after a few punches, Hulk was already a bit confused. Roar. Just as Emil Bronsky was preparing to continue giving Hulk a few more punches to try, he heard a wild beast-like roar behind him. When he instinctively turned his head to look, he saw a toy giant bear covered in flames, exposing its sharp mouth full of sharp teeth and roaring at him. Then it rushed towards him at high speed, accompanied by waves of scorching flames that made Emil Bronsky and the Hulk feel extremely hot and unbearable. The giant bear raised its paws and flew him and Hulk, the two Hulks, onto the walls of the street. Two huge human-shaped holes were smashed out. Oh! Damn it! What the hell is this? Brunsky, who was photographed flying, fell into a pit on the wall. He looked incredulously at a scratch on his chest that was burning with flames. It was really painful now. This newly emerged flame giant bear makes him a bit confused about the situation. What exactly is this? A toy giant bear burning with flames. Oh! God! How could this damn giant bear come out of nowhere and dare to provoke itself by hooking its claws? I can't spare it. Tibers is punching and flying two green orcs. Afterwards, he tilted his huge and ferocious head and hooked his fingers at the other person. 6 whole years. Since Anne was caught as a pet by her when she was 2 years old, it has been trapped in a toy bear for a full 6 years now. Now I finally have a second chance to come out and let it out. Today it decided to have a good time. We absolutely can't just deal with that old dragon in a few strokes like we did before. Bransky, who was provoked, suddenly struggled out of the large pit on the wall, then angrily grabbed a street lamp post and charged towards the flame bear. Now he can't care about Hulk anymore. As Bransky charged towards the flame bear, Hulk struggled to climb out of the collapsed half-wall. Hulk is clearly still in a wild beast state with a confused mind. He only knows that Brown Sky is an enemy, and he definitely needs to defeat him. And this newly photographed flame teddy bear is also an enemy, it burns itself in pain. It's also an enemy. Any enemy is a target of Hulk's attack. Compared to the slightly smaller Brown Sky transformation of the skinny Hulk, this taller and more powerful teddy bear, which is also covered in flames, clearly has more mocking ability and can attract Hulk's hatred. So Hulk went backwards, crossed over Brown Sky, and charged towards the teddy bear. I saw him ignore the pain of being burned by the flames on the teddy bear, and fiercely punch after punch hit the big belly of that teddy bear. His immense power deeply dented the belly of the teddy bear, leaving one fist mark after another. Under his attack, more flames sprayed out from the teddy bear's patched joints and the ferocious bear's mouth. Seeing Hulk launch an attack on the flame bear ahead of him, Brown Sky, who was a bit confused and 2 steps behind, carefully thought for a second or two before finally following suit and charging forward. He thinks it's more reliable to kill the strange toy bear in front of him first. However, he also kept an eye on it. Seeing the bear covered in flames, he was not foolish enough to rush over like Hulk and risk being burned to start boxing. But instead, he picked up the electric pole in his hand, roared and jumped up, and then slammed the hollow steel pole onto the teddy bear's head. Just this blow flattened the opponent's head. Should I die now? Looking at the flame teddy bear with half of its head flattened by him, Bronsky thought to himself. Although I don't know what kind of monster this is, if the vital part of the brain is attacked, it will definitely not survive, right? But just in case, he lifted the steel pole again and continued to smash the monster bear's head several times. See if you die or not. After being knocked off by himself, Bronsky stopped and looked at the monster bear with its head sunken by himself. Then he looked at the foolish Hulk, who was constantly attacking the monster bear's belly. He didn't know what to do next. Should he continue attacking and tear the giant bear into pieces first? Or turn around and kill this Hulk? Roar. As Bronsky was stunned and Hulk continued to attack, the toy bear let out a loud roar, followed by the same blazing claws that knocked the 2 Hulks away with just one paw. As the 2 green giants were knocked out, the terrifying dents on the teddy bear's head and belly immediately returned to normal like inflation, and its head bulged back as if it had never been attacked before. Annie was sitting on a billboard swaying her feet, disdainfully pouting as she watched the battle in the distance. She certainly knew that her little bear Tibers was playing with the 2 Hulks, and no one knew Tibers' strength better than her. However, since Tibers wants to play, let it be. Anyway, and also hates those 2 green monsters. Then let Tibers have fun first. Tibers is a shadow bear, whose essence is actually a pure shadow flame energy. The outer layer of toy bear skin is nothing more than magical leather sewn on by Annie. This leather material is not only a container containing Tibus, but also a sealing prop that constantly binds Tibus. Under the dual effects of this prop and the contract, it can only transform from an immobile teddy bear named Tibus to a massive and agile flame giant named Tibus with Anne's consent. These two fools. Are they green ogres? Has the brain been struggling? Do they still want to use their fists and iron bars to deal with themselves? This is really ridiculous. Tibers opened his mouth and casually patted his belly with his burning claws. Their attacks did not even damage the magic enchanting leather that bound them, let alone their own shadow body. People in the continent of Valoran know that any shadow creature is immune to physical attacks. Although it is not easy to eliminate a shadow creature, it is not too difficult. The best way to deal with shadow creatures, magical creatures, or elemental creatures is to use magic. It can be any type of non-immune magic, and of course, it can also be used with magical weapons or temporary enchanted weapons. However, it is obvious that both of these green giants in front of us are purely flesh shield physics professions, commonly known as tanks plus physics DPS. They have no magical attack ability, no magical weapons, and there is no group of auxiliary professions such as wet nurses or druids to enchant or buff them. If viewed from a game perspective, it is not difficult to see that the attacks of two Hulks and Bronski hitting the teddy bear may sound loud, but they are actually all immune. 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 Whether they hit with their fists or turn around to smash the lamp post, the result is all immunity. But the teddy bear's counterattack can make them flesh and tear, and those shadow flames can also scorch them to the point of unbearable suffering. Although the damage is not too high compared to the powerful vitality of the Hulk, it cannot withstand the accumulation of small amounts. Even if the Hulk's defense is high and its life is strong, it claims to be an indestructible little Chong. But when they faced the dark and fiery creature toy giant bear that appeared from nowhere, they could only be mercilessly patted away by Tibers time and time again. After a series of bear claws, they were each held down by a blazing bear leg claw under their feet, suffering from the torment of the claws, becoming their ultimate destination. After a half-hour-long battle, brutal beating, the knockoff version of the green giant Bronski has passed out under Tibers' claws and flames, because Bronski still has human consciousness. Under the agony of scorching his soul in the huge flames, his body's automatic protection mechanism has plunged him into a state of unconscious self-protection. The authentic green giant Hulk, produced by the wild beast factory and controlled by anger, curled up, tightly hugging his head in the pit and motionless. Only when Tibus attacked him did he snort a few times. Anyway, he couldn't do anything about the shadow bear, and the shadow bear couldn't do anything about him for a while, so let's do it. The beast version of Hulk thinks this way. Anyway, the opponent's attack won't hurt his muscles and bones. Although the claws scratch his skin and it hurts, the flames are also very annoying, but it's still far from taking his own life. And countless counterattacks by oneself are even more helpless to the other party. Since that's the case, let it do it this way, let it beat it up, maybe it will leave on its own in a while. This is the posture exhibited by the beast version of the Hulk after admitting defeat. If a wild dog loses a fight, it will still pretend to be a grandson with its tail between its legs. The Hulk will hold its head and lie still, admitting defeat, and there is nothing to be alarmed about. Can shame and shame be eaten as food? Anyway, his whole body is already green from head to toe, how could he still care about his face? Moreover, the current Hauka is still dominated by the thinking of beasts. So, let's just keep it for now. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. I, Tibus, never hold grudges. I avenged everything I could on the spot. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 9. Remember to bring money or your phone when dining out. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This translator is experiencing an error, please try another translator. Chapter 10. There is a spell called drawing circles to curse you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. There is a spell called drawing circles to curse you. After dinner, while Melinda was shopping with Anne on the street, Coulson quickly reported to Nick Fury using emergency equipment in the special SUV of the SHID. However, it was discovered that the director in the communication video at this moment doesn't look too good on his face. At this time, director Nick Fury was sitting in the bathtub with a pale face, his dark upper body and head were covered with a lot of foam, and the only intact eye was staring at the communicator sharply. Coulson, do you know? I've been very dissatisfied with your performance lately. I'm very dissatisfied. Nick Fury finally took a shower after work and was feeling comfortable soaking in the bathtub when the emergency communicator started ringing. When he didn't have time to put on his clothes and open the communicator, he found out that the guy across from him was Coulson again. This bastard. Can't we just follow him? Or perhaps something particularly urgent has happened. Or did that little girl burn down the city? Or blow up the earth? Why else do we need to use emergency communication? That, director. There's something I want to report to you about here. Without your consent, I wouldn't be able to handle it. Coulson touched the cold sweat on his forehead, knowing that the anger of the director across from him was on the verge of exploding. Speak up. Nick Fury decided not to talk nonsense to this jerk for now. His anger had already overwhelmed his mind, and if it wasn't something important, he must make sure the other person looked good. Well, it's like this. When I just finished eating, we suggested to Anne that she could go to school so that she could integrate into the lives of Earthlings normally. Although she also looks happy, we still need your approval for this matter. Sure. I agree. But if there are any uncontrollable accidents, it's your responsibility, that's it. Pop! Suddenly, Nick Fury turned off the communicator hard and stood up from the bathtub with a black face. Now, he no longer has the mood to take a bath. For Coulson, he is becoming increasingly disgusted and has to seek his advice on every trivial matter. More importantly, it happens every time he finishes work. Wait, Nick Fury was just about to reach out for a towel when he suddenly froze. Just now, Coulson said he wants to send that little girl into school. And I also agreed to it myself. Has he ever done a risk assessment? What if that little girl suddenly erupts, hurts someone or destroys the school? Nick Fury quickly walked back to the communication device and just as he was about to reach out and redial the number, he stopped again. After careful consideration, he realized that since he had just agreed to speak out, in order to maintain the authority of the wise and courageous director, it would be better not to do things that change every day. Anyway, he just said that if something goes wrong, it's the other party's responsibility. That's it. Is it none of his business whether that little girl burns the school or not? The director is very busy. Coulson looked at the screen displaying a communication interruption and didn't know what to say for a moment. Fortunately, he prepared a lot of evaluation reports and didn't even have time to say a word, but the director actually agreed. What's wrong? Melinda, who had just returned from shopping with Anne, threw a large and small shopping bag into the car, looking curiously at Coulson. These things are mostly for preparing clothes and some daily necessities for Anne. I just reported to the director and he agreed to Anne's enrollment. That's good. Come on, Annie, come here and get in the car. Melinda sat in the driver's seat, ignoring Coulson from behind, and directly opened the passenger door, beckoning Annie to get in the car. As for the rule of not allowing children to sit in the passenger seat, she had long forgotten it. This is a car from the Divine Shield Bureau. Give those police 10 courage, how dare they come and investigate. Wow. The sea. The beach. Tibers. Let's go play together. Just got off the special car from the Divine Shield Bureau and saw the silver-white beach and the boundless blue sea in front of me. Annie was so happy that she quickly got off the car, threw off her shoes, and ran towards the beach. This is her first time coming to the beach. Tibus didn't reply to Anne's master, asking him to come out and play in the sea. Don't even think about it. It's a shadow bear, with fire, and naturally doesn't deal with water. It wouldn't come out and play with this little girl in the sea, never. Wow. Beach villa. It seems that the director has really invested a lot of money. Driving into the outdoor garage, Melinda and Coulson got off the car. She leaned against the door, holding hands and looking at Anne, who was enjoying herself on the beach in the distance. She also looked at the villa in front of her. This is a seaside villa in the suburbs of New York City, with 3 floors and a wooden structure. It has a red roof and white wall paint, and comes with a backyard, a swimming pool, 3 garages, and a large private beach. Oh. And a yacht parked on a small private dock on the beach. In fact, all the 5 miles of beach around it belongs to it. Coulson put away the car key and stood next to Melinda. What a corrupt bureaucrat. Melinda grumbled in dissatisfaction. At least we're enjoying it now, aren't we? Coulson chuckled smugly, only now that he realized the job as a temporary nanny wasn't too bad. How do I feel like we're in Anne's light? Melinda was a bit displeased with Coulson's attitude. Is there a difference? Coulson was about to open the door of the villa and turned around to ask. Melinda shook her head helplessly at Coulson and turned to greet Anne, who was still having fun on the beach. Annie. Come back quickly and take a look at your new home. Wait a moment, it's getting dark on the horizon. Oh. Come on. Annie picked up a bowl of seawater and tasted it. Pooh. It's salty, bitter, and astringent. She originally planned to run into the sea to play, but she thought she didn't know how to swim. So let's forget it and go back and see her new home first. And is still very satisfied with this place. After all, besides swamps, poisonous mist, wild beasts, and various flying insects and reptiles, there seems to be nothing interesting there in the land of voodoo. Opening the front door of the villa, Annie and her 3 were about to enter, but they found that the whole space suddenly twisted, and the door of the villa could not be opened in any way. Looking up, an identical beach villa appeared in the sky above, but it was upside down. As if there was a huge mirror across the sky, reflecting the villa, beach, and sea together. Annie. Please don't use such strange magic indiscriminately. Melinda and Coulson instinctively felt that this must be Anne's mischief. It's not me. Annie glared at them angrily. Annie, she wouldn't use the magic of mirror space recklessly. Although she can do it too, it's very dangerous. Without sufficient proficiency in space magic, using such dangerous magic casually can easily lead to losing oneself in mirror space and never returning to the real material world. In the land of voodoo, those bearded gentlemen usually only use this mirror space when conducting certain dangerous magic or alchemy experiments, in order to prevent those terrifying experiments from causing irreversible damage to the material world. It is obvious that other mages have taken action against and in this situation, but their techniques are too immature and rough, causing a lot of unhappiness. How dare they casually use such dangerous spells on themselves? Annie decided to teach them a good lesson. So Anne extended her fingers, condensed her magic, and lightly tapped into the air. A wave of magic rippled out like ripples, counteracting the magic. Shatter the mirror. Lock space. As the visible magic waves dissipate, the entire mirrored space immediately shatters and dissipates like shattered glass. The whole world has returned to the seaside scene of blue sky and white clouds. They did it. Annie pointed up towards the direction of the road outside the villa, where 5 people wearing hoodies and robes were standing. Their entire faces were hidden in the shadow of their hood, unable to see their specific appearance. It seemed that the 5 of them were all dressed similarly, and they were still holding a wooden stick with an unknown purpose in their hand. Anyway, just now Anne felt the fluctuation of magic from them, although compared to Anne, it was very weak. Probably equivalent to the apprenticeship level in those gray organizations. When did a group of apprentices become so bold? Dare to use the mirror space recklessly. Without saying a word, Melinda and Coulson turned around and pulled out their pistols from their waist. They clenched their hands and pointed their guns at the 5 people on the road. What are you people? Stop. Otherwise we'll shoot. Hee hee. The person in front of him didn't stop, just chuckled lightly. At the same time, 2 hooded men immediately walked out next to him. With a flick of their wooden sticks, they turned into long whips emitting flames. When the 2 SHID agents were stunned, a gentle flick swept away the guns in Coulson and Melinda's hands. Oh. Damn it. Coulson held his wrist and took a step back, clearly indicating that his wrist must have been dislocated. Melinda's arm was also torn open with a bloodstain, but she took a step forward and pulled out a swing stick from her waist, staring at the person in front with hatred. Annie frowned as she looked at the 5 strange people still strode towards her. Tibers told her that these people were not good for her. However, little bear Tibus had no intention of coming out. After all, these people in front of him were so weak that and could burn them all with just one finger. However, this is the entrance of Anne's new home. She really likes it here and needs to think carefully about what magic to use to deal with them without burning anything. Generally speaking, Anne is the best at dealing with enemies and uses the most except for the small fireball, big fireball, and big fireball. It seems like she doesn't have anything else. Oh my. Annie thinks it's really annoying to do things at her doorstep. I really want to blow them up and burn them, but I'm afraid I'll ruin these beautiful flowers and plants. Take them down. The leader took off his hood and said, revealing his face. It wasn't until then that Coulson and his team realized he was actually a middle-aged black man with a rough face. As soon as the words fell, the 4 subordinates next to him scattered and surrounded from both sides. With a flick of their long sticks, they turned into bright whips and then rolled towards Anne and the 3, as if intending to capture them alive. Humph. Annie Ching snorted. With a wave of her small hand, a transparent flame shield circled her along with Coulson and Melinda. 4 long whips immediately hit the transparent shield and bounced open. Seeing that the attack was ineffective, the black man in charge walked up and spread out one hand, while the other hand drew a circle towards Anne and the others. The first 4 people who launched the attack saw this and also changed their long whip back into the shape of a wooden stick and inserted it back into their backs. Then they scattered around and drew a circle around the magic shield in the same way as their leader. Ah, ha. Annie was stunned. What are they doing? Are they only drawing circles around themselves when they have to fight? Are they trying to draw circles and curse themselves? It looks so impressive. Is this a new curse spell? I'm really looking forward to it. Do you want to wait and see? When Anne was feeling strange, she saw that the other party had already drawn 5 circles and jumped into them together. She instantly appeared inside Anne's magic shield, and 2 of them rushed towards Coulson. Coulson was caught off guard and kicked in the back, directly lying on the ground. She was immediately subdued by the 2 of them. The other 2 stepped on the back of Melinda's calf one by one, forcing her to kneel and twisting her hands behind her back. And the leader, the black man, also appeared behind and at the same time, chopping with his right hand and striking behind Anne's neck. It seemed that he was trying to knock her unconscious. Annie hates you all. Annie felt the movement behind her, clenching her fist with a small hand, and a burst of flames rose from her body. The flames then dissipated, forming a fierce and hot burst of air that directly propelled the 5 attackers into the sky. However, Melinda and Coulson were not affected by the air flow as one lay on the ground and the other knelt down. Looking at the 5 people who were temporarily unbalanced by the airflow flying into the sky, and did not stop. She extended her right hand and grabbed the 5 people in the air. 5 long flame ropes appeared out of thin air, directly tying them up. Then, and waved her hand again and threw the 5 people who were tied up onto the beach, causing them to fall and eat shit. And sneered as she easily tidied them up. Why do they play melee like warriors, even though they are weak and come from mages? The wizards in this world are really strange. Also, their teleportation spell actually requires drawing circles to open the space channel. At first, it really scared her. I was looking forward to it, but I didn't expect the result to be like this. What about the agreed curse of drawing circles? If you want to teleport over a short distance, why don't you just use instant flashing? Do you still need to draw circles? Little Annie said, if we start fighting seriously. Before they finish drawing circles, she has enough time to burn them down 100 times. Oh, no. At least 1,000 times. Hello. Director. We may need some support here. Coulson, who had just woken up, once again took out his phone and dialed the number of SHID Director Nick Fury. End of this chapter.